Hello everyone, sign distance fields, or functions. You may or may not be aware of a new interesting add-on being developed called Are SDF. I'm pretty sure I've shared it in a previous community roundup video, but I want to take a bit more time just to let you know about it because it seems like something that will be extremely useful for modelers of all different kinds. I think it might be quite revolutionary for hard surface concept artists, for example, and while we talk about it, you might learn a little bit more about the fundamentals of 3D modeling. But before we get into it, I want to let you know that this video is sponsored by a member of our community. This is the first time we're ever doing this, which is quite exciting. Spencer Magnuson, a add-on developer in our community, has decided to sponsor this video, and if you stick around until the end, I'll tell you a little bit more about their projects and you can get your hands on a free add-on as well. That's the really cool thing about our new sponsor system. Because we're not really focusing on large companies, it means you can get something of value that's relevant to you from the community. So stick around for that. So Are SDF is what we're talking about. And if you haven't heard anything about this, SDFs are kind of a different way of representing shapes in three-dimensional space. It doesn't even necessarily need to be three-dimensional, but for the sake of Blender, we're just going to assume that's the use case. SDFs are a bit of a complicated thing to describe because they are inherently very mathematical. An SDF shape is essentially just a function, an equation, if you like. And the job of this equation is to give the interpreter a value, and the value is essentially just a distance from any given point. When you pass a position into the function, it will tell you how far away that point is from the surface of the object. Now, it's a bit of a weird thing to get your head around if you're brand new to this kind of thing, and I'm probably not explaining it very well because it's not my field of expertise. But what this means is if you imagine that that point is moving around an object and technically scanning it, then because the object is mathematically described, you can get an infinitesimal amount of detail. It's a little bit similar to how NURBS or curve-based modeling works, not in the same way, but with regards to the fact that, like if I just come over here, with curve-based modeling, instead of working with polygons, you're essentially just describing points along a curve like with vector graphics if you've done 2D graphic design before. So imagine that with this shape here, we got a point at the top, we got a point in the little bevel area there, and we've got a point at the end. Now with 2D vector graphics, you would use handles to kind of control the shaping of that curve. But if you zoom into the curve, you'll get an infinitesimal amount of detail, basically meaning that no matter how far you zoom in, it's going to be a perfect curve every time. Now we do have that in 3D modeling, that's technically what NURBS are. We have that in Blender as well, but it's not necessarily been designed for that. But this is how most like computer-aided design softwares work, where the shapes are essentially just mathematical expressions which are added, subtracted, effectively booleaned from each other, depending on which operation you choose, to get a shape. So the concept that I want to drill home here is that when understanding SDFs, shape equals expression, or shape equals function, shape equals maths, etc. So there might be some of you around which are thinking, well, polygons are math as well, aren't they? They're points in a 3D space, they are expressions of mathematics. And the answer is yes, but polygons are a bit different because it's almost like a self-imposed limitation, if that makes sense. Numbers in mathematics are perfect, and they are again kind of infinitesimal. If you take a number like 42, you can put a decimal point and say, okay, 42.00000 onto infinity. We can also have recurring numbers that go on into infinity. We can mathematically describe curves like circles with pi. The mathematical side of building shapes is kind of perfect. But with polygonal systems, we kind of took maths and then used it to self-impose limitations. So when we look at shapes, we see facets, which are essentially the polygons. Building shapes in 3D space never had to be that way, but we kind of decided that it should be just because manipulating polygons was convenient and it was a less complicated way to render complex objects to the screen than describing everything with purely mathematical formulas. And it's not like that was a cognitive decision from the beginning. I mean, there have always been different ways to look at rendering engines. That's why there's not just one type of rendering engine. But what we've been stuck with in 3D art, not just in modeling but also in texturing, is just the techniques that were convenient for the most use cases for the longest amount of time. And the same thing can be said for texturing as well. Like UV mapping is a pain, and I think we all kind of know deep down there's inherently something wrong with the idea of wrapping a two-dimensional image around a three-dimensional object. It doesn't make sense. It's convenient, it's effective for our use cases, but three-dimensional objects are inherently that. They are three-dimensional, and texture is not two-dimensional. It's a result of the actual physical material and the wavelengths of light we see that are reflected off the surface of an object. When we look at this marble, for example, the grooves in the marble are not wrapped around the surface. They might look like they are, but they actually permeate through the object. So I believe at some point in the future, like with some of these modeling revelations, we're going to get on to talking a bit more about modeling techniques, I believe at some point in the future we'll we'll have a texture evolution. We'll be able to find ways of describing how material not only looks on the surface, but also permeates through objects. And we've kind of already been testing this because, like with my procedural patterns pack, if you've been playing around with some of the presets, we have materials contributed by, I think, Chris James Brindley, an amazing artist, where we combine surface materials procedurally with volumetric materials as well. Well, it's all in the same node graph for things like jadeite materials, where we can actually look through an object while also seeing some of the glossy detail on the surface. But anyway, back to modeling. Hard surface modeling is tricky and annoying, but really most of the frustration comes down to some very common techniques surrounding booleaning. So take, if you will, the classic problem of intersecting a sphere with a cylinder. With our traditional polygonal modeling, we need to be careful of how the vertices and the edges of the two intersecting objects mix with each other. Ideally, we would like geometry to be completely equidistant and preferably quads, but that's not necessarily required. N-gon supremacy, gang. So the thing is, a lot of modelers that use Boolean techniques end up dealing with a lot of time-consuming fixing or preparation. They must prepare the geometry to be perfect for this intersection, or I must fix the geometry afterwards. And there are all kinds of tools to help with that. But it's just painful, and it's inhibiting of creativity. It's not very freeform, and that's why a lot of artists, myself included, like to explore alternative techniques for modeling in Blender, which is why I did a video in the past about the other ways to model in Blender, which I think people found quite surprising, because when people come to learn Blender, they think that, oh, only poly modeling or sub-D modeling is the way to achieve shapes because that's what all the professionals say you should do. But that's just a convention. Again, the most useful thing for the longest amount of time for our use cases. But there are lots of esoteric or lesser known ways of achieving shapes. And that's where SDFs come back in. So with the Conjure SDF add-on that Joao de Zega, which I probably pronounced the name wrong, sorry, otherwise known as John Kaz Art on Twitter, it effectively lets you take these mathematical expressions of shapes and merge them together with pretty good performance from the look of it, in a way where the shapes seamlessly blend together, and you can change the parameters of these objects afterwards as well. So from the looks of the parameters, the connection points between objects can also be modified in the settings. They've also been working on a way to convert the SDF shapes to meshes, which is also going to be super useful because that means we can then take it and modify it with our regular Blender toolset. Now, some people will look at this and go, isn't that similar to voxel modeling? What about metaballs? We've kind of been doing the same thing with them before, and that is true, but none of these techniques are exactly the same. There are pros and cons and differences all around. So SDFs are what I would call a virtualized geometry system. Now, I don't know if this terminology is actually consistent with other people in the community, so I'll try and describe what I mean. When you make points in cycles in geometry nodes, like if you're making a point cloud, no matter how far you zoom into one of those spheres, it's going to be a perfect sphere. But it's not real. You can see it, but it doesn't actually exist as an object. Blender doesn't consider it to be an object. This is what I would call a virtualized shape, a virtualized mesh, something that technically exists, but it doesn't actually exist. Similar to how in geometry nodes, if you instance objects onto other objects, like if you're scattering something around a terrain or a character, it technically doesn't exist as real geometry until you add a realize instances node. So I would consider anything before realizing instances virtualized until it's created. So that's my definition. When we're observing mathematically constructed shapes in 3D space, like with CAD modeling or with SDFs, whether they're in the shader editor geometry nodes or through an add-on, creating things in the 3D view, I consider them virtualized techniques, where until they are converted down into actual polygonal mesh objects, they are technically just like ethereal. Metaballs are a bit different because from my, again, kind of limited understanding of metaballs, they're more of a voxelized technique, where if you imagine a hypothetical three-dimensional grid that's invisible in the space, when you have objects representing a positive influence in that grid, you kind of draw a shape between the points. So when they come together, you can see connecting points, but they kind of like they're a bit snappy and weird, and you can almost kind of draw out where those points are, like marching cubes. You think about Minecraft, or when you kind of cellulize shapes like that, like with voxel remeshing or remeshing with the cube method. The creation of a grid is a very apparent part of that. And it feels like when you are meshing voxels, it doesn't matter how much detail you put into it, you're always going to see a little bit of like a bumpy grid. It's a bit weird. And that's always going to be a bit of a limitation, right? Because even with SDFs, when you're converting down into a mesh, you're still need to choose a remeshing technique, and each of those is going to have pros and cons. So you're going to lose some detail, but I think the important thing about this method is that up until the point where you want to realize the shape, you have something perfect, which cannot be said for every modeling technique. For example, the way I imagine this working in the future for my workflow is that if I wanted to do some hard surface concepting, some product design maybe, stuff that could be printed out in a 3D printer or sent off to be formed, I would have in my mind a component room and a modeling room. And the component room is where I would express and design components in a mathematical way with SDF modeling or an alternative, like NURBS computerized method, something that is inherently perfect and mathematically expressed. And then when I want to use it, say if I want to convert it down to a mesh, who knows, maybe for like importing in a game engine or something, then I would do that. That would be the destructive transition. Now we're already kind of familiar with this workflow because a lot of you out there use subsurf modeling, and you think, okay, well, how is this different from subsurf modeling? Because we can change the number of subdivisions and just increasing it until we get our infinitesimal quality. Even with kit bashing, you see a lot of kit bash packs online, and a lot of the hard surface ones will say works with subsurf modeling, where the components of the kit bash pack have been designed to increase and decrease in levels depending on what you need. You'll see this a lot with like the visual effects industry because you want to be able to control the quality level of your objects. The thing is, subsurf modeling is a lie. I should put that on a mug. Subsurf is a lie. Because of this, I've got another marble paperweight here. So subsurf modeling is kind of like weird semi-virtualized thing. When we think about modifiers in Blender, I would consider the modifier output to be virtualized before it's applied, in which case it becomes real. But every subsurf object looks like this. There is no such thing as a perfect curve. When you look at the surface of an object with a subsurf modifier, you will see facets. And then if you increase the levels, it might look perfect, perfectly smooth and round, but then if you zoom in again, you will see more facets. So you increase the levels again, zoom in, and then you'll see more facets, and then you increase the level again, and so on and so forth. So it's not exactly the same. Plus with subsurf, you have to deal with all those transition issues which we talked about with the Booleaning. So basically all of this is to say that in the 3D modeling world, there's quite a large demand for freeform, lossless modeling. Preferably somewhere between polymodeling and sculpting, which is where 3D Code's done a pretty good job as a software, but it's still kind of heavily relying more on voxelized methods, voxel modeling, live voxel modeling, converting down into surfaces as they call them, which is just polymodeling. So let's go back over to the computer. We'll take a quick look at the Conjure SDF add-on and what's going on with it. Then we'll talk about our sponsor. You can get a free add-on, and then we'll close things up. Okay, hello again. So over on Twitter, we have again John Kaz Art here, who's been developing the add-on. They are a tech artist for Rycon Official, game development studio. So if you scroll down, we'll see some examples of meshes that are made using the add-on in a beta/alpha capacity, in this case, to be converted down to mesh. So this is someone who's used SDFs to build a shape and then convert it to the mesh, and you can see some of the limitations here of converting to meshes as part of a remesh technique, but the forms are very organic, very fluid in the way that they're merged together. People that have done voxel modeling in the past would be quite familiar with the look of this. With SDFs, you can worry about design and shape first and foremost, and then worry about the geometry and topology second. That's the whole point about this. Notice here, these are shapes which would be very difficult to achieve with traditional polymodeling. These cylindrical shapes blending into other curved surfaces. Here we can see how taking something mathematically expressed and converting it down into a mesh presents some technique issues. Using a basic marching cubes algorithm, runs on the GPU as a compute shader, churns through 2 million voxels in a matter of seconds. That's impressive. Very close to full integration now. So we have a raw conversion of SDF to mesh, and then we have a remeshed and smoothed version. It can come out to be a lot of geometry because, again, when you're taking something infinitesimal, you can pretty much add as many points or as few points as you like. Now, this is the demonstration which I think is really going to sell the idea to hard surface concept artists, because one of the limitations we bump into when doing some of these esoteric methods, like using metaballs for everything, is not only is it finicky, but sometimes it also gets quite slow. And being able to see here how a complex hard surface shape is being smoothly modified is really, really impressive. So again, in my mind, for like an ideal hypothetical work environment for this kind of model concepting is I would have a component room where I'll do this kind of work, and then I'll have my modeling room where I will convert that down into a mesh and then use that to do other types of artwork. And then hypothetically, if this is like a widely used thing, widely regarded, elements in the component room could then be shared with other people. people. So this would effectively level up the game for kit bashing, because when sharing kit bash objects between other people now, you don't necessarily know like the quality level or whether things are going to be compatible with self-serve modeling, but having SDF kit bashing, that could be a game changer. So what about native integrations? Well, even though this add-on is being worked on, there are people that are looking and working on natively integrating SDF modeling as part of the geometry nodes toolkit. It's kind of something you can do already-ish, again, not my field of expertise, but it makes a lot of sense to have SDFs as like a native integration for Blender. But again, it might be a bit too soon to talk about that, and I don't really know what's happening behind the scenes. I just thought this is something you might be interested in learning more about, because it's got quite a few people excited in the community. So now we're coming to the end. I'm going to let you know about something you can get your hands on now, a free add-on, as well as a paid one, from our community sponsor, Spencer Magnuson. Now, Spencer is actually the second person to make use of our casual sponsorship system. The first one is still waiting for something to be released. But what Spencer wanted me to show you was a couple of their add-ons. So first of all, we have the NView add-on, version free at the moment on Blender Market. NView is an add-on for optimizing scenes based on what can be seen by the camera. So this is all about trying to decomplexify your scenes if you're working with a lot of objects, which can be a little bit annoying having to enable and disable things in your collections just to try and speed things up. I do that all the time. It saves on rendering time without compromising anything visually. So you can automatically hide and disable collections or objects that reduce your performance without affecting what's seen by the camera. So if you're interested in optimization, it's a really handy tool to have available. Supported in all render engines, interacts with all of the object types when doing this, and works in both perspective and orthographic, which is impressive. And quite interestingly here, you can bake object visibility to keyframes. So instead of having to have it calculate things every time, sorry, my camera died, you can bake the optimization down, which I think is really handy. I don't know if anyone's ever come up with that idea before, but it's worth checking out. You can also mask out geometry outside of the camera view, which is kind of interesting. This reminds me of like, well, this is a form of culling, right? I wonder how much of a performance difference that makes. What about objects visible in reflections or behind transparent objects? You can preserve those too. Now that's clever, because that is something that game engines often fail at doing in terms of optimization. So from the looks of it, it sounds like Spencer has really spent quite a lot of thinking effort on getting this set up. But I did also promise you a free add-on. So again, from Spencer, like think about it this way, how many sponsors from other YouTubers get you free stuff you can actually use? So Light Painter. This is an interesting one because as far as I understand it, Spencer made this after watching one of my earlier tutorials about painting with light or drawing with light. So I'll show a video they prepared on the screen here. What Light Painter allows you to do is it lets you draw with the annotation tool, I believe, where you want lights to affect your objects, and then the add-on will automatically create a lighting setup to make that possible, if that makes sense. So watch here, you can draw down the side of your character and then lights will appear. I really like this bit where you can draw light onto a phone screen and then it appears and then emits onto the character's face. It's a really interesting concept for an add-on, and again, this is free. You can go and download it. I'll leave a link to the repo in the description. Spencer is a lovely community member as well, so if you want to follow them, I will leave their socials here. Quite easy to remember, spencer.magnuson. So they're on Instagram and Mastodon as well. So yeah, very useful. So thank you, Spencer, for making use of our casual sponsorship system. If there's anyone else out there that wants to have something shown on a video for a relatively low cost, because I'm giving artists and individuals a estimated 75% cost reduction to the corporate rate, then head on over to codasalt.online/services. And if you made it this far through the video, consider putting what should we do? Something shape related? I don't think there are many emojis for that. Sculpting, sculpture, maybe let's just do a cake. Who doesn't like cake? Well, I'm pretty sure some of you probably don't like cake, but... And finally, remember to subscribe for more Blender news and recommendations, tools development, and all kinds of stuff. Support me on Patreon, check out my products, do a little dance, and I will see you next time.